One of the best things you could do is make your site accessible to people with disabilities. Accessibility is a pretty huge topic, and there are a lot of steps you need to take to cover every area. This lecture will be an overview of what you can do to make your theme and plugin accessible to people with disabilities. Before we make any changes, it's important to understand the various kinds of disabilities you may come across. Usually, they can be categorized into 4 different topics. Visual, such as blindness or color blindness. Hearing, such as deafness or being hard of hearing. Motor, such as a lack of fine motor skills or difficulty in using a mouse or mousepad. Cognitive, such as learning difficulties, attention deficit disorders, or dyslexia. It's usually up to the producer of the content to determine how to tackle these situations. However, as developers, we should also take the time to help users navigate around the site. The topic we're discussing is what HTML5 calls ARIA. ARIA is short for Accessible Rich Internet Applications. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to where you can find more information about this topic. As you can see, there's a lot of information here and a lot of attributes you can set. We won't be going over all of them. This is just a brief introduction to this topic. So let's get started. One of the first steps you can take is to make the elements on your page more understandable. For example, on the sidebar, I have the search widget. If you can recall, this is formatted using the search form template. To us, it's clear what this will do. However, that's because we can identify the search icon inside the button and know right away what it means. For people who can't or don't understand, we will need more information, especially people who can't see this visually. Open the search form template. This button is entirely made up of HTML and no text. In order to provide more information about this element, we can apply an attribute called aria-label. The value for this attribute can be anything you want. Usually, you would provide a short and concise description about this element. I'm going to input search. Just like that, if a user is using a device, such as a screen reader, then they'll easily be able to identify what this button does. You can apply the aria-label attribute to any element you like. There are some exceptions though. Image tags don't need this attribute because there's the alt attribute that already does something similar to the aria-label attribute. Let's keep moving forward. One of the biggest ways you can make your site navigable is by using roles. Roles are a way to categorize the sections of your site. They're very simple and straightforward to use. If you look at the search form template, you'll notice we have an attribute called role. By adding this attribute, you can specify the type of content that's inside this element. This is a great and simple attribute to use. It allows for users to skip around without having to go through each individual element. Let's play with the role attribute some more. Open the header template. I'm going to apply the role attribute to the header element. I'm going to set this to banner. The banner is the value you want to set to the element that contains the logo and navigation links. Go to the page that describes ARIA in detail. If you click number 2, you'll be taken to a list of all the values that role can be set to. There are dozens of them available. We'll only be using the more major ones. So we told the user where the header is. The next region we can set is the main content, sidebar, and footer. Open the single template next. Apply the role attribute to the div tag with the class post content. I'm going to set this to main. This will tell the user this is where the main content is located. I want to highlight that you should only apply this region once. As a standard, you usually only have one region for the main content. You don't want to confuse the user. Be conscious of where you define this region. Alright, let's keep going on. Open the sidebar template and apply the role complementary attribute. This will specify the sidebar region. Lastly, open the footer file and apply the role content info attribute to the footer element. This is a weird name, but this is usually the name of the region for the footer. Just like that, we've set all our regions. There are so many more things we could do to make this theme accessible, but I'm going to stop right here. If you want to test a theme for accessibility, you can simply use a tool called Wave Web Accessibility. I'll provide a link to this in the resource section of this lecture. I'm going to give some final thoughts. I find that adding accessibility to my themes is not a high priority. I usually tackle accessibility last, and I don't build upon it unless the product I'm building has high usage. It really is a case-by-case scenario. It's up to you in the end if you want to make your themes and plugins accessible. It's never a bad idea to do so.